thank you so much for coming
Thank
back
you
on the
again.
program.
Thank you.
And we are really looking forward to, these ongoing segments as we talked about when you first came on. So today we thought we would talk about two kind of topics, which would be family counseling, and couples counseling. So can you just give us just a quick overview of those two types of counseling?
So primarily for family counseling, it varies. The demographics of families is so non-traditional anymore. So it could be a grandparent and grandchildren that the grandparent has assumed responsibility for. It could be a mother and a child from a single family. It could be a father and children. It could be blended families. So that's generally what the composite for family therapy is. The other topic of when we're looking at couples, it's generally they can be married or not married yet, a premarital therapy, or divorced couples who might be looking or questioning if they should re-enter into their marriage, believing that they may have made a mistake in divorce prematurely prior to getting some type of help.
That's interesting. I've actually never heard of that one before.
Yeah.
So going back to the family counseling topic, or for both either, how does a family or family member or partner know when it's time to ask for outside help?
Generally, the indicator is based on the person, tolerance, experience, and what they may see as dysfunctional. Because what you might see in a family and say, that family could really use some help, and versus what they might think they need help on, could be two different things. So much of the time when a person comes to therapy, whether it's through the format of couples or through family counseling, it's generally when things have gotten very elevated in the household, a lot of dysfunctional behaviors taking place, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's children attempting to run away, some sense of self-harm, just a tolerance level reaches a threshold and one of the family members break and they can't tolerate the dysfunctional level anymore.
Okay. Now, with couples, you mentioned that completely new dynamic that I've never heard of, but for people who have been married, they've been married for 5, 10, 15 years, how do they, what would they do if there's one person who says, I think we need to go to therapy, and if there's the other person who's like, I'm not going to therapy?
Well, generally and I get that call all the time. That's a great question. Generally, one of the individuals will call and say, I want to come to couples counseling, and the first question is does the other person know that they're coming? Because I've had people show up and think that they're coming for one thing and not aware that they're, and I generally try to advise exactly that.
Yeah.
It's like,
yikes.
Don't do that. That's a surprise. So I generally try to advise people not to do that, to be open and say this is what it is, because if they don't want to come, what I suggest is that the other person still comes to therapy, because what happens is when a couple comes anyway, sometimes I wind up separating the couple after even if they agree to come to couples therapy together, just because you'll find that some of the issues might resonate with one particular person versus the other person. And there's a lot of things that account for that. Sometimes your individual experience just could be different. So it's just an example. If you and Dwayne came in as a couple, well, not
If you what, are you going to burst into tears now? You're going to cry?
No, she's giving an example. Let her speak.
If you two came in as a couple, and say you came from a household where there was a lot of domestic abuse and violence, and that was your experience, and so one of the things that you came presenting in the relationship is a lot of hostility, very argumentative, disruptive emotions. And Dwayne may have been raised in a Christian household where they barely raised their voice, but yet when you came together and you met, that behavior didn't happen. But over a period of time, the person and their lived experiences began to live their experiences. So what you would come in, and Dwayne would probably come in saying, we have a lot of issues with communication. And so through our dialogue and our sessions, I would realize that the issue really lied with you and what your childhood presented and what you took on, the schemas that you applied for life and how you see things. And so I would separate the couples and say, why don't you just come back and see me, you know, for the next 2 sessions by yourself, and then your partner could come back in and we talk about some of those messages and how you interpret things poorly that add to the dysfunction between the two of you, or the barriers within the communication between the two of you.
Okay.
Here's a question. I think sometimes, and this is just me hearing it, that if a couple goes for therapy, that the therapist is really not allowed to say if one is wrong or the other one is right or anything like that. Does that damage something if that is being said? Because in some cases, one might be right more than the other one, but I think maybe it's not fair to say that to make someone feel wrong. But how do you clear it up and let them know you were wrong?
That's a good question.
Well, I will tell you, for all of my clients who may watch this, they will tell you Dr. Margo does not do that. If you're wrong, I say you're wrong. And generally when you call me and say you want to come into therapy, I tell you, be prepared to deal with your issues, because then we don't fix anything. So you're not there to sugarcoat things, at least when you come to my office and you're on my couch. If you're wrong, then we call it out and we say why it was wrong, and we talk about that behavior. Otherwise, you just walk away believing that I may have been okay in that argument, or how I conducted myself was appropriate. And that's not what I want you to walk away. I want you to walk away being able to identify what the barriers are for you, what the problem was, and having a solution on how you address it, and both of you feel comfortable moving forward. So unfortunately, in my office, in my practice, you don't walk away with that.
But that's kind of good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would think.
Absolutely. So I never have partners feel like it's unequal. It's just because when I say it's wrong, then I tell you why it's wrong and what it looks like from a different lens and a different perspective. And a lot of times people say, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way.
Now, does the same thing apply to a parent and a kid?
Oh, absolutely. I tell that to the parent all the time, and even in front of the kid, absolutely. Because parents don't get everything right either. You know, and depending on how they were parented, they translate that into their own homes. And so if you're screaming and yelling and there's a great deal of cursing and contention between you and your child, I say that's not okay to do. That's not an appropriate manner for you to communicate your needs or what your concerns are to her. So you're wondering why she's screaming back at you. Absolutely, that's not okay to do. And that makes the parent accountable to the child for their reactivity just as much as we want the child to be accountable to the parent. So absolutely, it helps form functionality across the unit. Yeah.
So what happens in, so let's go again, either one, the family or the couples therapy. So you're in therapy, you're talking, everything's fine, and everything feels, and I'm going to do air quotes, I don't feel, it's safe, right?
Yep.
Then you leave that office and you're just, it's kind of like you were in a nice little safety raft, then you leave that office and then you're back in the ocean again. And it's like, even if you come up with a plan in the office, what can you say to people, or what do you say to people who are thinking, it made so much sense when we were in here talking about it, and then like the very next day or later on that night, everything we talked about went out the window, and we just, I mean, what happens, what advice do you give then?
I will tell you, people leave the office, and I don't want to say that rarely happens for me, because I really do try and have people leave in a good, healthy space with each other. I give homework at the end of every session, no matter what, whether it's family, whether it's couple, whether it's individual therapy. I give homework at the end, and part of that is to be healthy when you leave out of here. It makes no sense if you're wonderful when you're here and you can't go out and apply it. That's the whole purpose of the homework. So if someone fails, they're more than happy, and people come back and say, I just need to let you know, I had to use your name a few times, and say, I'm going to tell the therapist. They do. People text me and say, I'm sorry, they failed. This is the text message that I got, and it's inappropriate, but I'm not going to respond back to it. And I say, as you shouldn't. We'll deal with that when you come back. But they tail on each other all the time, because there's a level of accountability.
What about the level of trust in that situation?
They come in and they're trusting in me
to
give them the correct tools to be able to manage it. And then when they go out and they actually feel themselves doing something different, it becomes very easy to trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. If it's a couple does the male feel like he might not get fair justice by coming to you as a woman, or a woman coming, you know, a woman in the same breath coming and be like, well, she's a woman, she might look in your behalf, whatever. Do you ever get that?
I never get that. I practice being very fair. Okay. I don't work on feelings. I try to be as non-biased as possible, and I tell people that coming in, if you're wrong, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. I'm going to tell you what lens I'm looking at. I'm going to tell you how the interpretation sounds. And one of the things that I really try to have people do, Dwayne, is when they come in, we have what's called the cognitive triangle, and it looks at feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. For me, I try to replace that feeling piece with facts. I believe that if people actually look at the facts of what's happening, it allows them to actually be able to see their behavior very differently, and not to get lost in, oh, well, she made me feel this way. Well, tell me what she did to make you feel that way. And it's very hard for people to identify what action took place. And I say, well, is that what she did, or is that your interpretation as to why you felt that way? And a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, it will be that the person is acting on their own internal stuff.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, a little bit. A little
well,
bit.
That kind of leads me into my next point. It feels like, I was thinking about, like I told you, I've been a little bit nervous about this interview all week, okay? But I, in preparing for my sister's visit, I'm trying to like really clean up the house and everything. But for like 3 days, my house looked like a tornado hit it. Okay. You know? And it's back together now, but it feels like that would be the same type of concept in therapy. For a minute in therapy, for a while, when you start, everything's going to be a mess.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's change. Whenever you have to start changing and modifying what's internally happening for you, it makes you question yourself. It makes you question the person with you. It makes you question what you were taught. Because then that means you have to say you've been living wrong or in a dysfunctional state. But it's so perplexing to me how we normalize dysfunction, where we just walk around and we think it's okay, and we don't realize it's not okay until someone says, it's not okay for you to be screaming and yelling and calling each other names. Why? Where did that become okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have any other questions?
No, I just know if something happened to me, I need to go somewhere, I know where to go, but I'm cool.
Well, that's one of the reasons we wanted to keep having you come on the program, you know, because number one, we want people to know that you're available to help. But then the other thing is, I feel like the more we talk about it on the air and the more people kind of understand what to expect, perhaps any of the fear or anxiety they have about reaching out for help will be at least alleviated somewhat.
Absolutely.
You know, that's my hope.
Absolutely.
So
and I think people also too, when we have to look at it, I think people are scared of a diagnosis or someone judging them, and that's really not what happens in therapy. We're really there to give you the tools in order to help you be better. People are always worried about, well, what does this mean about me? How did I get here? How did I fail? And there are times when everyone needs help. If you're on the side of the road and your car breaks down, you need to call someone for help. So you have to do that for your own mental state of mind and wellness as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what we'll talk about the next time, but the three of us will get together and come up with something wonderful. And thank you so much for coming on the program again.
Thank you for having me again.